Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to talk today about the isolation because I've been having conversations with people who are in the thick of things, and they're saying how isolating it is and how, or maybe they're feeling that isolation and they're not maybe communicating it, but I can just tell by the way they're talking that they're feeling what I felt. So it's very common and I think normal in the circumstance that we're in to feel and to be isolated. I'm not saying it's right by any means, but we're in this situation where we're having these severe reactions, whether it's a withdrawal syndrome or whether it's an adverse reaction or both. In my case, it's not validated in the medical community for the most part. It's not recognized for the most part. And if it is recognized, it's it's only going to last a couple of weeks. Or, akathisia happens to some people who take these drugs, but as soon as you stop the drug, it goes away. So that is not helpful. And so there's all these people who are having very long, protracted withdrawal syndromes. Like they'll take one dose of Reglan or Compazine or Abilify or any of those things, haloperidol, and they'll have akathisia for a year. And it's so isolating because I don't know if doctors are not aware or if they kind of shove it to the back of their conscience or if they're just oblivious or too busy. I don't know what it is, but it's rare for you to get validation from the medical community. Not only validation, but in most situations or in a lot of situations, you get gaslit and told that you're crazy or mentally ill. And when you try to explain to them, I was never like this before the drugs or before coming off the drugs, they don't believe you. Or they say, oh, well, you've developed a mental illness then. Or it's a return of your original illness, which you hear that all the time. But then you have all these people saying, but there was no original illness. And they'll say, well, then why were you put on psych drugs in the first place? Well, people are being prescribed them for back pain, insomnia, grief. I mean, all of these things that have nothing to do with mental illness. And then they're developing all of these symptoms of mental illness: bipolar, mania, schizophrenia, panic, OCD, depression, like severe depression, suicidal ideation. And it's like, I was put on this for back pain and now I've got all these other problems. And so it is an extremely isolating experience. That's just the medical side of it. That's just the doctor involvement. Then you have your family and loved ones. I mean, people lose relationships. I mean, it was a contributing factor to the breakdown of my relationship. And I mean, I don't know if it still exists, but there was a Facebook group I used to be a part of called Marriages Destroyed by Antidepressants. And there was like 3,000 members. And then you have so your relationships, whether, like romantic relationships, your spouse, your partner, and then you have your family. So your immediate family, your siblings, your parents, your kids, even like parts of your extended family, like whether you have grandparents or cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever. And these people are like, what's wrong with you? You need treatment, or get it together, or it's not possible for you to be having either this type of reaction or this type of withdrawal timeline. And so that happened to me. My relationship fell apart. I mean, this wasn't the only reason, but it was the catalyst. And then, so I moved in with my mom, and it took her a long time to come around. She ended up having to have a video conversation with someone who had been through this severely. She's fairly well known in the community. I won't say her name on here, but she went through a long healing process, had akathisia and all of the horrible symptoms, polydrug, benzos, everything. And I got to know her really well. And she was a part of my video chat group that I had formed, as a support, even though she's healed. She was kind of our mentor in the group. And she had to have a conversation with my mom, telling her story and in detail and describing like what happens from these drugs. And it had my mom in tears. My mom is not an emotional person. And she finally was like, I'm so sorry that you're going through this and that it's really that bad. And that was a turning point, not a breaking point. That was a turning point in my relationship with my mom. That was like 2 years ago now, or maybe not quite that long, maybe 18 months ago. So, and like my dad's not in my life, but my brother, I have one brother who's married and has kids. had no interest in learning or knowing what was wrong. He just kind of assumed, you know, she's got mental problems, she's incapable of taking care of herself, which if you look at the pattern is not true. I was on my own for 17 years. I had a high-paying leadership job. I was living in a different city for 17 years and on my own. And now I'm like living with my mom, and I moved back in with her at age 37. And I think he just ignored all of the independent years I had had before and was just like, my sister's crazy kind of thing. And I had had an old YouTube channel talking about my withdrawal experience, and my mom had tried to encourage him to watch some of my videos. I had a blog, and he was completely uninterested. So I felt isolated from him and his family, my niece and nephew. My dad is not in my life. My ex was no longer in my life. I had lost basically my friends because nobody understood what I was going through, and I didn't even know how to explain it to them. And so I had lost a lot of my real in life, like in-person friends, and I had lost my jobs when I reinstated, so I didn't have that connection. And I had one cousin say to me like, oh, well, if you're so sick, then how do you drive? Like, why hasn't your license been taken away? And I'm like, well, I have a movement disorder, and they're like pseudo seizures, but I'm fully conscious and they don't happen all the time. And that's really none of your business. That's between me and my doctor. So I've had rifts there. I had a rift with another cousin. So I was down to, when I reinstated and got really bad, sorry, I just have to shift. I was down to my mom and my video chat support group and my grandma. She believed me. And so I had formed this video chat support group of women who most had akathisia, but everyone had severe symptoms from these drugs, whether they were in withdrawal or whether they were trying to taper. I think we were all in withdrawal. I don't think there was anyone that was trying to, oh no, that's not true. There was one or two that were trying to taper. So anyway, we were all having issues from these drugs. And so all day long we would spend on video chat and just hopping on and off. There was always someone available to talk to. And it was my lifeline for a year. My first year after the reinstatement. I actually met them while I was reinstating. I had found several of them, or they had found me through my old YouTube channel. It was an amazing source of support. So I had them, and I had my mom and my grandma, and then eventually I had a doctor on board who's amazing, and I've talked about in other videos. So it's very, very isolating for all of those reasons, because it's not recognized, it's not talked about, you're gaslit, it's not studied, and the warnings or the labels on these drugs talk about a quote discontinuation syndrome that lasts a few weeks. And that is just, if you talk to real life people going through this real life experience, that's not the case for a lot of people. I always tell people, even when I'm going to research a course I'm looking to buy or a product that's kind of expensive that I'm looking to buy, I want not the experiences of the people from the website where they can take out the negative experiences and just post all the wonderful experiences. I like to go on something like Reddit, where you get real people's experience, real life experience of what goes on in these drugs. So I'm not interested in what the FDA and what the Health Canada says about discontinuation syndrome. I want real people's experiences. And the truth is that there's thousands, if not tens of thousands of people on these forums who are not having that 3-week withdrawal situation, or once you come off the drug, the akathisia goes away. It's much different. The reality is much different. Of course not. It doesn't happen to everyone. There's people, my own mother, who was able to cold turkey off different psychiatric drugs and has never had a symptom. And then there's other people like me who go through years of symptoms. So it just comes down to individual, biochemistry and detox pathways, the health of the liver. There's all these factors. Nobody really knows for sure. But if you're feeling isolated and alone, it's part of the experience, unfortunately. But there are people like me, there are coaches, there's a lot of people in the community who can validate that what you're going through is real. I am here to tell you that what you're going through is real. It's not something to be gaslit. It's not something for someone to tell you, oh, it's all in your head. It's just anxiety. It's the return of your original illness. It's not possible, because the tens of thousands of people who are experiencing this will tell you the contrary, and tell you that what you're experiencing is real. I'm here to tell you that. And if you're feeling alone, don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, I didn't have real life people except for very few, and even they didn't understand it first person. I didn't have people who understood. That's why I took the initiative to form a support group, and it was amazing. I'm so glad I did it. I still talk to several of those people to this day, and most of us are doing better. And yeah, if you have to do something like that, do it. There is a fine line though, I feel like, because the forums can also be toxic in the sense that, you know, people gather there to talk about their symptoms, and there can be a lot of worst case scenarios there. And I feel like sometimes you can feed off the energy, or people feed off each other's energy. And it's not often people lifting each other up. It's like, oh no, I'm suffering the worst, or I'm suffering the most, or I'm suffering the most. And oh, did you know that you can be protracted for 10 years? And meanwhile, these people are leaving parts of their story out, like, oh yeah, actually I've reinstated 10 different times. So you can't rely on that. So I feel like if you can have a close-knit support group of people who can just be your friend and who are going through this themselves. Like I said, I found most of mine through my old YouTube channel. They had reached out to me and we had become friends on social networks. And just, yeah, I think, and then, so it started for me like with a small core group that had found me on YouTube. And then they were inviting people that they had found. So it just kind of branched out, and it ended up at one point being, I don't know, 10 or 11 of us. It was amazing. So if you need to do something like that, do it, because it will, or even just listen to YouTube videos all day. I used to do that all the time, of people spreading messages of hope. And that's what I'm trying to do with my channel. So, and say that things do get better. It took 4.5 years for me to start to feel better. But again, and I'm not going to lie and say, oh yeah, I've been off for 4.5 years or 5 years and I just started getting better. That is the truth, but I'm not going to leave out the part about where I reinstated and messed around with doses and took benzos and cold turkeyed off those and took antipsychotics and took more SSRIs. People leave that out on the forums and they say, I don't know why I'm not getting better. It's been 6 years. But it's like, how long has it actually been since you took the last drug? So even though I say I've been in this journey for 5 years, I have been, but I've only been drug-free for 27 months yesterday. So I just wanted to say that, and you're not alone, and thanks for watching.